Well, you rapped about a lot of serious topics that I think people would have been surprised that somebody your age would be rapping about.
Mm,
As you mentioned, cram to understand that's substance abuse, what
mhm,
poor Georgie talking about drunk driving and
mhm,
mental health also
mhm,
at the same time.
mhm.
Why were you so intentional about addressing these kind of big topics?
Um, well, it gave me a reason. And my reason was just to inspire people to either do the right thing or inspire them away, push them away from what would have been wrong. And so I had a big anti drug message, which was don't take drugs, don't sell drugs, don't be involved with anyone who sells or takes drugs. Just stay away from them. And it was primarily for my generation because as a kid, I'm seeing all of this that is just way too much. I'm seeing crack on the streets of Brooklyn. I'm seeing heroin addicts in the streets in Harlem. And my mother worked at a Harlem hospital. So uh, I would see heroin addicts on the third floor. I never wanted to go to the third floor. I wanted to get straight all the way up to the fourth. And sometimes my mom might have to go down to that floor to do something. So I'd walk with her and I'd just see just the pain of those who had succumbed to drugs and were trying to make their way back, but it was so difficult.
Now, there were, obviously a lot of rappers at that time who were taking on these big topics. But did record companies or like the industry itself, did they ever discourage you all from like talking about those things? Because, I'm sure they probably are like, we're trying to sell as many records as possible. And like, who's trying to, party if you're hearing a mess like not doing drugs? So was that ever discouraged?
No, not at
Mm,
all. Not when I came in. When I came
mm,
in, the record label didn't know what to do with us except let us do what we do, and that's why you got such great, authentic, introspective, thought provoking lyrics from people. And there were also people who were having a good time. Heavy D was having a good time, rest his soul. Will Smith, Fresh Prince, he was having a good time. So you were allowed to, Father MC had a good time. It was a bunch of them. But then you also had people who would give you stories. You also had people who would address, topics, Public Enemy for one, address topics that no one else would touch, but they had the chutzpah to want to just address these topics head on. And yeah, we had the full gamut.
mm.
But no, I never had anyone at the label say, don't do that, or shy away from that, or we want more of this, or nothing like that.
um, uh, the climate for women in hip hop has obviously changed a lot.
Mhm.
Um, even looking at I went back and looked at like a lot of your old videos just in prepping for this because I hadn't seen them in a while.
Mhm.
One, I had to give myself credit because I was amazed that like it's amazing how some lyrics would never leave you. Like I can
Mm.
rap all the cha 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 right now. I'm not gonna do it, but
Right,
I can do
right.
it.
I got you.
Or I think the first video I ever saw you in was Paper Thin, and
Mm.
so I'm looking at how your videos are styled and what you're wearing, and thinking about how has changed when it comes to women in hip hop.
Mhm.
Did the record company, because you were more of like kind of the around the way girl on the tomboy side, what kind of input or feedback did they ever give you about stylistically how you wanted to be and be presented as an artist?
Well, the only conversation I ever had was with Sylvia Rohn, and I did a photo shoot when I was 21, and I had just come into my womanhood. I wanted to do a little sexy cover. And when she saw the photo shoot, she was like, "What the hell is this?" She called me up and she said, "Look here, I need you outside in your jeans, in your sneakers, and your t shirt. Stay young for as long as you can. And we're going to put this photo shoot on the back burner." And I was like, "Okay." And I went
Mm.
out, and that is the cover of Act Like You Know,
Mm.
which
Why
I
do you
am
think?
literally in the New York City streets in jeans, a t-shirt, a jacket, and some pants. Because it was for what? Who were you doing this for? Your fans are gonna appreciate you being coming out the way that you have the last two albums. So it was me turning 21. Okay, this is what you do. Hey. And it's like, no. And now it's just the opposite, right? It's weird.
Yeah, that's why. That's what the irony of that. I was like, now every exec, would be looking at you like, well, why aren't you in these things? You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying?
Yeah.
Or dressing, a little bit more provocatively.
Hmm.
I read an article that you did with Rhapsody and for Billboard a few years ago,
Hmm.
and you were talking about when it came to women in hip hop, there seemed to be a lack of variety. Do you still feel like variety is still an issue?
I feel like it's an issue as it relates to promotion and marketing. However, because of the internet, we have really leveled the playing field. So now these women like Rhapsody and Tierra Whack and Chica and Lady London, all of these women, they get to Mumu Fresh and Mama Soul, and they get to play in an arena that wasn't so accessible before. So yeah, I think they're there. I just want more light, no pun, on them so that they get the opportunity to affect a larger demo.
Hmm.
Mm.
Um, well, do you think that sometimes I wonder what's the chicken and what's the egg? Like,
Mhm.
is it lack of promotion or is it something else? Like, how do you see what the kind of the core problem is?
I think it's the opportunities. I think more opportunities come your way when you're the status quo, when you aesthetically look like what it is they're looking for, or um, when and these are individually owned magazines. All of these parts of mainstream media, they have their idea of what beauty is and what's going to push the envelope for their viewer or their reader. And sometimes I think they might be wrong. It's always like this network says, no, this show will never work on my da, 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 and they show it. It's like the hit. It's like, oh wow, I didn't know. So it's a lot of ignorance, a lot of I don't know, but I'm going to err on the side of what everyone else is doing, and that's how a whole group of women get shut out of certain opportunities. Case in point, well, not case in point. But in addition to, I've been asked by the Kennedy Center to curate a Women in Hip Hop I Am Woman series there at the Kennedy Center for their 50th anniversary next year. And I'm going to have a bunch of women in hip hop who have never seen Kennedy Center, who have only heard the title and haven't had much interest because the institution itself really didn't have interest in them. Um, or could easily say, let's get the big names, and they usually depend on other people to curate for them. So we're talking about a roster of women that cover the spectrum, which will have everyone from Remy to Yo-Yo, from Rhapsody to Rage, from Tierra Whack to Moni Love. So we'll sort of bring that chasm that exists and crush it and bring all of those women on the same stage.
Do you feel like there is camaraderie or a sense of kinship or a sorority, if you will, between um, the older generation, and I hesitate to use the word old, because right, and newer generation of artists? Like, is there cohesiveness there?
Older is always good. It's just the truth. Older,
Okay.
younger. When you say old, then that's a problem. But
True.
I think, for me, there isn't. I can talk to any one of them on any given day. And I think it's just about who resonates with who. I talk to Salt much more than I speak to Pepper. Doesn't mean that I don't love her. It's just that Salt and I have way more in common, which I'm sure, someone like Eve, or, someone like Kim, or Nikki, or they may talk to Pepper because they have more interest in common with Pepper. So it just depends. And I have built really great friendships and sisterhood with a lot of female rappers. Yo Yo was just here yesterday. She is on this coast to celebrate her daughter's 18th birthday, and she came here last night. We went out, we ate, we stopped by a Red Alert event that he was not at yet. You're gonna be late to your own event to celebrate you. In any case, yeah, so at any given point, I'm talking to any one of them. So I don't really know about that gap that exists. However, it doesn't mean it has anything to do with age. It just could be personality.
Right. I often am struck by the fact that with men in the hip hop industry, male artists, like we see them in competitive, their competitive nature all the time. They come at each other, they go back and forth, whatever, and it's just considered just kind of a part of the game. That it's no indictment for of who they are or that genre. But when it comes to women, there's always this expectation that all hip hop artists should be friends and should be all pulling for each other and everything like that. And I'm not saying that that's not cool, but when it comes to the competitive part of what rap kind of has always presented, are women held to maybe some unfair standards to some degree?
Um, they can be held to whatever. That doesn't mean it's going to work, right? We saw
Right.
one of the biggest feuds play out with several different people with Nikki. Like Nikki had to watch her back wherever, it was people coming from everywhere. And, with her and Remy and she and Cardi and whoever else it might have been. But it all stayed on record, which is great, And I think the one time something was about to break out, nothing happened. So it was great. Nobody had to be arrested because we've seen that happen before. No, yeah, no one had to be arrested. No one had to be, sedated or anything. And it just lived on record. And at a certain point, it played itself out. It was like, okay, enough. They both said enough is enough. They've got so much more to do. And when you're young, I mean, that's what you do. You bark, rah, rah, rah. If you can't say you're the best MC, you might as well sit down from the gate because it is about bravado. It's about, braggadocious. It's about being braggadocious. And if you can't do that, then hip hop ain't for you.